Welcome to the Plaza Film Festival in El Paso, Texas. Excuse me. This is Perspectives El Paso with Professor Leon Blevins at El Paso Community College. But I have a deep love for the Plaza Classic Film Festival. My wife Shanna for years has been an addict of Turner Classic Movies. Many years ago I was on a committee that was urging the restoration of the Plaza Theater. Janice Wendell and Mary McGuire, Nestor Valencia and others got very involved in that and saved the Plaza Theater. And my family and I, we bought a tile out in front of it, and we got a little certificate because we gave some money as a fundraiser to get that thing going and clear it out instead of it turning into a parking lot. And so we have great memories of this and some of these people. I've had some of these on my television show over the years. Back in 2009, I had Eric Pearson on this show talking about the Plaza Classic Film Festival that had begun a couple of years before. And then the next year I had Charles Horak to talk about it as it was progressing. Now here we are, 10 years after it started, and a gentleman I've crossed paths with all of these years, Doug Pullen, is now helping to run this thing. Doug,
Yes,
welcome.
Well, thank you.
And we really enjoyed this year's Classic Film Festival. Now, I don't really usually read something, but I want to tell you I was a part of the Classic Film Festival in 2009 as Robert De Niro. Did you see me as Robert De Niro?
I don't remember.
Okay, some man, well, Mark Lambie, you know Mark Lambie with the El Paso Times, he took a picture of me sitting there near the organ, the pipe organ, because some of my friends like Jack Stewart would sometimes play the organ. So I would like to get over there and watch their fingers and their feet. Here comes Mark, he takes a picture of me. My wife was not with me then, she was out of town. And so the next week or so, there was my picture in the paper. A week later, a man from Deming, New Mexico named Paul Hoyland Jr. wrote this letter. "What's up, Doc?" Bugs Bunny asked in a classic Warner Brothers cartoon. The answer is the biggest show in town, the ongoing Plaza Classic Film Festival, which ends Sunday. This incredible event includes 80 movies and features live interviews with such stars as Eva Marie Saint and Tippi Hedren. The main course was an evening with Al Pacino. Luckily for theater goers, festival organizers Charles Horak and Eric Pearson must have made Pacino an offer he couldn't refuse. All this is in the elegant and majestic Plaza Theater, a venue Cecil B. DeMille would have been proud of. By the way, I loved Mark Lambie's photo of Robert De Niro, look-alike Leon Blevins. Congratulations, Charles and Eric, for shining a brilliant spotlight on El Paso. We can only hope that that's not all, folks. It's not all, folks.
It's not all.
Who did you get to come this year? The movies and some of the people that you interviewed. My wife and I saw some of those, all right?
All right.
How did you get them, and who were some of these that we had this year?
We brought in Richard Dreyfuss to appear with Jaws and Mr. Holland's Opus. We brought in Kathleen Turner to appear with Romancing the Stone and Peggy Sue Got Married. And then we also brought in animators Don Bluth and Gary Goldman to appear with The Secret of Nim, which was their first post-Disney project. And they also made a couple other appearances. We have an exhibition at the Art Museum devoted to Don Bluth, who is an El Paso native. And he is somebody that I had wanted to bring into the festival since I've been involved with it because of his El Paso connection.
Right.
And I think a lot of people didn't know about that and didn't realize that this man who'd worked for Disney and then became one of the leading independent animated filmmakers was originally from here. So after 3 or 4 years of off and on attempts to get them, we worked something out.
When did you plug into this? When did you actually start working?
The foundation, El Paso Community Foundation, which produces the festival, hired me in November of 2013. So just a few months after that year's film festival had ended. They were looking to institutionalize it in a way to create a position on staff that would be responsible for it. And at the same time, Charles Horak was stepping down from his volunteer position, technically, as artistic director. So I had a lot to learn, and 2014.
They were your mentors, right?
Yes, sir, and so were a lot of others, but yes, those two in particular. And my first festival was 2014, so I inherited an apparatus, I should say, and tried to learn it and then sort of build on it, honor it by trying to keep it consistent, but at the same time get my own way of doing things.
Well, now you're just now still winding down from this year's festival. Yeah. When do you get active, really tied into getting ready for next year's, making contacts and all of that?
Well, that starts actually before the previous festival. So the 2017 festival, planning for that, some of those ideas, some of the contacts for that 2 to 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. So for the 2018 film festival, some of the basic wood shedding has already happened, and there's plenty more to go, but right. Probably 3-4 months out, some serious discussions and ideas started. So I don't want to tip my hand or anything, but a lot of research has already been done for one of the main themes if it comes together.
Now, when you have some of these come in and you get acquainted with them, I remember when Debbie Reynolds came, and they actually named a room after her there in the building, and my wife and I got to visit with her some. She had a real bad back, and she sat at a table with us for some time trying to get her back in shape. And so people like that come in. They make the rounds of film festivals. Now, Debbie just died this past year. Some of them make the rounds. Yeah. What do they say about our film festival compared to some of the others they've been to?
Well, so far since I've been doing it, I was covering this for the El Paso Times for the first 6 years and then working on it for the next 4. By and large, people are very impressed. And I think a lot of it is because they didn't know much about it and they had never been to El Paso before. So I think they kind of plug into, the friendliness that's just sort of inherent to this community. That hits them pretty quickly. And the theater is a major factor. They walk in and, Richard Dreyfuss is a real student of old Hollywood, and he walked into the theater and just, he marveled at it. And the fact that a theater like that had been preserved in a day and age when a lot of them have been torn down and replaced, that impressed him.
Well, when I was young, after World War II, and my parents divorced, and I would spend a lot of time in Los Angeles area with my father and stepmother, especially in the summer, with aunts and uncles at other periods. And I would go to some of these wonderful theaters, Lowe's and Grauman Chinese Theater, and some of them. And I had a cousin, a female teenage cousin, that she got a job in one of these big theaters and wore a little red hat and would escort people to their seats and all these kinds of things. Yeah. You're too young to remember those days, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I went to the Plaza Theater as a kid a couple of times. But when I say kid, I mean high school, college kid. Mm-hmm. I saw a concert in there once in the 70s. And then I also saw a movie, The Omen, in there in the 70s. And this was after the Interstate company had sold it, and its future was in doubt, and guys like Jay Duncan were trying to keep it alive.
Well, my wife remembered Gone with the Wind. It was one of those she went to at the old Plaza Theater.
1940.
Grand theater, back in the 40s. And then so we got to see Gone with the Wind when it came here for the Plaza Classics, and we got to see some of the others that we remember. Giant.
Yep.
We got to see Giant.
We brought that back last year.
Yeah, because the theaters turned into boxes, and 12 boxes lined up, and you go choose which movie you want to go see. It's a very different experience.
Oh yeah, I mean, they've really evolved away from the old movie, single-screen movie theater, which is essentially what the Plaza was, and an atmospheric movie palace on top of it. And so the film festival is really born out of that tradition. When the Community Foundation was working on the restoration with the city in the early 2000s, quite a few people would ask them, are you going to bring back the movies, or are you going to show movies? And these memories would come out, and the festival grew out of that idea. Right. And it was, the first one in 2008 was actually called The Movies Return to the Plaza Theater, because it was 2 years after the theater had reopened after more than 20 years of dormancy. I don't know if they knew at that time whether it was going to be a one-time event or an annual event, but over 25,000 people attended that, 60 some odd movies. So the idea grew into an annual event, and they changed the name in 2009. And it really honors that tradition, and in terms of the Plaza Theater, all the way down to having organists open up, warm up for each movie in the Plaza Theater, which is a tradition that goes back years.
I remember one of the organists named Laurie.
Laurie Koval.
Oh,
Yeah.
she gets big rounds of applause.
Oh yeah,
And
she's
people
a
just come
crowd
and
pleaser.
say- She definitely
Yeah.
is. One gets us all ready to watch a movie,
Yeah.
whether it's a horror movie or whether it's a funny movie or
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
It works so
She
very-
tries to incorporate in something tied in with the movie, and then she likes to throw in contemporary pop songs. I remember
Right.
the first time I saw her at I think it was the first festival, and she was playing a Lady Gaga song, and I thought, I want to talk to this
Oh,
woman.
wow,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. Now then, people are already coming up to you and saying which movies they'd like for you to bring.
Oh, yeah.
Are you making a list, or are they just in
Yeah.
your brain, or are you writing them down?
It's you get a lot of that, and I welcome it. I think coming from a journalism background where I always tried to, as an entertainment journalist, I always tried to reflect the community I was in. So I want the festival to do that too, to at least some degree. And so people come up during the film festival and, oh, you should show this. And I write them all down. And I have a script that I carry with me, the notes for the day. And I keep a red pen handy and I write them down on the side. And then when the festival's over, I give myself about a week to recover. And then I start crunching all this stuff together. And so I have a running list for next year. And
Now, you don't have to give away any of the secrets, but what are some of the most requested movies that you're hearing now?
Well, a lot of them are movies that we've played several times. For example, Wizard of Oz comes up a lot. Now, we just showed that in 2014, and we had shown it before. I'll bring that movie back, but I may wait a few more years because I don't want it to be too close together. Wizard of Oz is an example. Casablanca had come up a number of times.
Right.
And the reason we showed it this year is that not only did it tie in well with the greatest hits idea, which was our overall theme this year, to kind of bring back movies that were either big hits for us, so to speak, or had some significance to the evolution of the theater. And Casablanca was the first primetime movie they ever showed, meaning first 7 o'clock feature that they ever showed at the film festival. So we brought it back for that reason as much as any.
What do you think makes a classic?
Oh God. I won't give you a scholarly answer on that. I think
Popular answer.
It's something that stands the test of time. And it doesn't necessarily have to be something that critics approve of or scholars approve of. I think it's personal, what's a classic. So I had a friend when I lived in Michigan who argued adamantly that Caddyshack is a classic. And I had never seen the movie, and having been a music critic for a good chunk of my life, I was quick to dismiss the notion until I watched it, and I thought, he's right, why can't this be a classic? So some of my friends who are more of the scholarly side will scoff, but I think just as Gone with the Wind is a classic, somebody else can say Caddyshack is a classic. And in my broad definition of that, I try to be inclusive and try to have all that. I mean, we showed Austin Powers this year because it tied in with a Cold War thread. And I've had a few friends say, Austin Powers, how dare you show that? And others said, what a great idea. So it ultimately, I work with a committee of about 6, 7 people, all different fans of different types of movies in different eras. And between the public input and the committee input, it all kind of funnels through me and I make the final call. But we do try to keep most of it within what you might consider a classic or maybe a classic in the making. Yeah. But we showed a movie this year that was from 2017, a documentary called Bright Lights, which focused on Carrie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds. And the reason for doing it was obvious. It not only did they die in December, a day apart, but Debbie Reynolds was from here and came back and appeared at our festival in 2010. So we did a small tribute to her within the festival, and that was why we wanted that in there. So you can make exceptions. It doesn't have to be 50 years old.
Well, we think of a classic as being a good story, told well,
Yeah.
acted well, and touches us emotionally.
It's a much better answer than I just gave.
That's an academic answer. We really enjoyed To Kill a Mockingbird, and we had a chance to visit just briefly with Mary Badham, I believe, who played Scout.
Yep.
And autograph signing, she signed a picture for us. This time, Richard Dreyfuss had an autographing party. We didn't go to that, but he was paying. You had to pay to get it, but it went for his foundation.
I guess. I'm not sure. I think it just went to him, but some of it may have gone to his foundation.
He spoke very strongly about his educational foundation and the idea of
civics initiative.
Civics education. We need to bring that back. And as a government teacher and having taught history, I was really strong for what he was saying.
Yeah, but that resonated.
And all of that.
Yeah.
It's interesting also to learn some of the things from the stories about people that were involved in the movies. I remember when Tippi Hedren talked about Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah.
No holds barred.
Not too kindly.
Right. And others sharing their stories about their colleagues and who they liked to act with and didn't like to act with. And what was it? Miss Turner this time said she didn't like working with Burt Reynolds. Nearly everybody else she liked to act with, but she didn't like to act with Burt Reynolds.
And when they talked about making Peggy Sue Got Married, which Francis Coppola directed, they were on a tight schedule. And, it was going to affect various things. And so they all pitched in to make sure that movie was done on time.
What have been your favorites?
Well, you mentioned To Kill a Mockingbird with Mary Badham. That was one of them. In doing a greatest hits idea this year, some of what I wanted to program were movies that had provided some of these great memories. For me, personally, as somebody who was covering the event and going to it. So Jaws was one. I had never seen Jaws in a movie theater until I saw it at the film festival. And I'd seen it, but it was always on television.
Right. That's nothing compared to the big screen.
It's not the same, especially in the theater like that. And a favorite moment of that was the scene that most people would know, where a dead body appears suddenly and the entire crowd screams. And it's no exaggeration to say practically everybody in that theater screamed, and there were maybe 1,500 people in there.
Well, when we first saw that in a movie theater years ago, the people near us had Cokes and popcorn, threw it all over us.
It's that
when
kind
that
of
scene happened, they threw it all over us.
Now they just turn on their cell phone. Seeing To Kill a Mockingbird in that theater with Mary Badham, talking, telling stories about it, it enhances the experience, and that movie itself just has a special tug to it. But I had never seen that in a movie theater before. And Dr. Strangelove, the first year of the film festival, they showed Dr. Strangelove. And it was another movie I always liked, but I'd never seen it in the theater. Being on the other side of it as a presenter, one of my favorite experiences was showing Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And we had over 1,000 people, and it was the last movie of that festival. And what I loved about the way the audience responded was everybody knew the lines that were coming, and instead of blurting them out, you could see people physically leaning forward, trying not to say them out loud, but they couldn't wait for them. Or even this year with Snow White, which Snow White is a really difficult film to get from Disney. And between Chuck and I, it's been almost 10 years of trying to get it. And this year we got it. And I wasn't able to watch the whole thing because we had too many moving parts, but I got into the theater for the last half hour. And you've got all these kids in there who've probably never been in the Plaza Theater before, and even some of their parents. When the evil queen falls off the ledge, they all cheer. And when they think Snow White has died, you can hear all the whimpering and the questions and low voices. And
my wife, and she took our granddaughter and great-granddaughter, and when she came back to the house, I didn't go with them on that one, that was the first thing she told me. She said it was amazing to watch the kids. They're so uninhibited about this, what's on the screen.
It's not CGI. It's an 80-year-old movie, and the kids just, it was fun to watch. And we showed Singing in the Rain this year, and we've shown it twice before. But after each dance sequence, the audience applauded, and that's just part of the charm of that festival. That's one of the things I love about it.
It's so human.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we look forward to years and years of this continuing and bringing new movies. I think I mentioned to you off camera that a movie that my wife and I just watched the other day on television called Truth. And it's about a woman who worked for 60 Minutes television news.
Yeah.
And they got some of their research wrong, and it caused Dan Rather to lose his job with CBS. And that would be an interesting to bring. It only came out last year.
Yes, it's a new movie, I haven't seen it. I know of it, but I haven't seen it.
So see here, I'm putting things in your brain.
There you go.
You can think about, jot it down on your little note with your red ink.
I would take my phone out and write it down right now, but that would be rude.
But others get theirs. And do you think sometimes that they're showing too many movies? We have so many, we can't go as many as we'd like?
I don't know. We show, this year I think we showed 95. The year before it was about 100, but the attendance would suggest otherwise. But I guess it's a good problem to have from a programming point of view when people have a tough time making a choice, as long as they make a choice, right? But I was crunching numbers and this year and looking, and everything was up. So even though there might have been some conflicts, I think part of it too, even though the festival is very much geared to local audiences, it is slowly growing its outside audience. And you get people who come in from out of town and they're there for 3 or 4 days, and they'll go see a bunch of movies. They'll buy a pass or whatever and see a bunch of movies. So locally, if you work and you can't go in the daytime, it can be a little frustrating because there might be something showing at 3:30 you really wanted to see, like Now Voyager or, a movie like that. But, I don't know. I guess if we were really taking a bath on this thing, we might have to look at that. We run it as try to break even is basically the idea.
They pay the bills and they can still employ you. Right?
Yeah, and we're not looking to make money. It was conceived as the way they described it initially was as a gift to El Paso.
Right.
And I think that philosophy is still very much in play. If there was pressure to make it profitable, you could see changes, that where maybe you don't show as many movies or you cut out 1 o'clock shows or something like that.
Well, this was the idea of this. We hear that. A gift to El Paso.
Exactly.
The Plaza Theater gift to El Paso. You don't want just a box as the gift.
Right.
You want something in that box.
Yeah, you need something in it.
And this is a theater, an operating theater. It's not a museum.
Exactly. I mean, it's technically a performing arts center now, and we're part of a bigger equation, with Broadway shows and the symphonies in there and touring concerts and comedy shows and so on. And we fill that place up for 11 days, really technically 12 or 13 because we're using it in advance to test everything. And
I remember when this first started, and my wife and I, portraying Santa and Mrs. Claus at a variety of events, mentioned that couldn't you open this up just briefly for some Christmas movies at Christmas time? They do that.
They do it, or we do it, I should say. The foundation does it. There was a gap there when San Jacinto Plaza was closed for construction. And we sat it out because originally the movies were tied in with the parade and the tree lighting ceremony. And we brought them back this past year and tied it in with 2016 with the new Winter Festival that El Paso Live puts on. And we haven't really we've talked very peripherally about it for this year, and hopefully we'll be doing Christmas movies again this year.
Before our 5 minutes remaining are gone, let's go way back to the silent movies. You brought in some silent movies.
Sir,
and the most fascinating one that I saw there was Metropolis.
Oh yeah,
I remember.
With the Alloy Orchestra.
A classic, a real classic.
And that was a newly restored version. There was some found footage that was added back in. That's something that Chuck Horak started when he was program director. The first year he did it, they showed The General, and Walt Stroni, who's the theater organist, came in and accompanied that. So I've tried to keep that alive. This year we showed Sherlock Holmes, which was another movie that, in this case, that had been considered lost for a long time. And we try to do one at least every year and have Walt come in and play with that, because the Weiler organ is the original theater organ, which the foundation had restored. And it's a way to show people what movie going was like prior to the opening of the Plaza Theater in 1930. And some years we showed two, and I'd love to bring back Alloy Orchestra, and there's some other groups out there who accompany silence I'd like to
Okay,
bring.
now one of the movies, and we'll close on this one, Citizen Kane. We saw that on the big screen. We'd been watching it for years on the little screen. We probably saw it years ago when we were young. Why is that listed as one of the greatest movies, maybe the greatest movie of all time?
I don't know. It's had that reputation for as long as I can remember, and you can read different critics' assessments of it. Roger Ebert loved that movie, for example. But for me, it's a powerful story, well told, and it was very experimental in a lot of ways and influential as a result. A lot of those techniques that were used in that movie are now standard practice.
And the black and white and shadows and gray.
Depth
and all
of field and different things that were done.
The way the cameras were operating.
Yeah.
Some of that's also part of what was so great about Casablanca. This good story,
Yeah,
but also the way that it played with light and shadows
yeah.
and grays.
A noir kind of feel to it.
Yeah, and we like those kind of things.
Yeah, and Citizen Kane, when they showed it the first time at the film festival, it was in the Philanthropy Theater, the small theater, and I gave Chuck a hard time, like, why'd you show it in there? Why wouldn't? And when he brought it back, he did it as a part of a tribute to Roger Ebert, because one of our regular contributors is Laura Emmerich, who was Roger Ebert's editor at the Chicago Sun-Times.
Oh, I see.
She comes in every year and does intros and
Yeah, I've heard
film
her do
talks
some
and
of
so on.
those. Well, we have 1 minute left. You have 1 minute to tell us your summary of the Classic Film Festival.
This one or in general?
In general.
I think it's just an opportunity to do something as a community in a communal environment. You sit in the Plaza Theater, and that's not the only venue we use, but you sit in the Plaza Theater, you're immersed in that movie. 43-foot screen, no cell phones distracting you, nobody spilling popcorn on you, and you're able to encounter a movie in a way you really can't any other way.
And you get out of your house and you go, as you use the term, act communally. And that's good for us as a people.
I think so.
Well, thank you for watching this program on, well, really it is Perspectives El Paso. And Doug Pullen has given us a lot of insight into the Plaza Classic Film Festival. Watch for next year and see if you can find your favorite movies being shown. I'm Leon Blevins.